Morning sunlight streamed through the window of a small house in the suburbs of San Diego. Melissa Williams woke up, as she did most mornings, before her alarm went off. For this single mother, each day began with these quiet morning moments. With 15 years of experience as a nurse, she worked tirelessly between her busy hospital shifts to build a stable life for her only daughter, Emma. As she slipped out of bed and set up the coffee machine in the kitchen, Melissa's mind was filled with the day's schedule, appearing and disappearing in succession. Wake Emma at 7, get her off to school, then head to her day shift. In the evening, she needed to finish shopping and leave the hospital in time for Emma's soccer practice. In the 3 years since becoming a single mother, her life had been like a precisely calibrated clock, a continuous series of days that couldn't afford the slightest disruption. "Mom, are we having pancakes for breakfast today?" came a sleepy voice as 10-year-old Emma appeared in the kitchen in her pajamas. The beautiful girl with golden hair was a testament to the happy times with Brad before the divorce. Her existence was perhaps the only saving grace from a marriage that had seen more than its share of hardships. "Good morning, Emma." "Yes, we're having special pancakes today. A reward for doing well on your math test yesterday." Melissa smiled as she gently stroked her daughter's hair. Emma's eyes held her mother's gentleness and her father's sharp intelligence. Every time she looked into those eyes, Melissa couldn't help but remember her ex-husband Brad. Brad Williams, a successful attorney, had been a charming man. His eloquence and intelligence once captivated Melissa, but as their marriage progressed, those talents were directed more toward his work and social life than their home. While the divorce was attributed to irreconcilable differences, it was his infidelity that had been the final blow. "Are you going to Dad's house this weekend?" Melissa asked, and Emma's expression clouded slightly. "Yes, but Linda will be there too." Every time Linda's name came up, a small pain shot through Melissa's chest. Just a few months after the divorce, Brad had begun dating Linda Petrova, a fashion model. Recently, when the news of Brad and Linda's engagement reached Melissa through social media, she maintained a calm exterior, but complex emotions swirled deep inside her. "Linda is someone your father cares about. Make sure you're polite, Emma." Melissa's desire to suppress her own feelings and provide positive influences for her daughter sometimes exhausted her. The custody ruling from the court had named Melissa as Emma's primary caregiver, with Brad granted visitation rights every other weekend. He paid substantial child support and tried to maximize his time with Emma. Suddenly, her smartphone rang, and Melissa checked the screen. It was a message from Michael Cohen. "How about dinner tonight with you and Emma?" Feeling her cheeks flush slightly, Melissa replied. Her relationship with Michael was just beginning, but she was starting to open her heart to the kindness of this anesthesiologist from the same hospital and his natural way with Emma. He seemed to enjoy spending time with her daughter. "Mom, you're smiling. Is that a message from Michael?" Caught by Emma's sharp observation, Melissa couldn't help but smile. "Yes, it is. How would you like to have dinner with the three of us tonight?" Seeing Emma nod happily, Melissa felt relieved. However, in the back of her mind, she worried about how Brad would react to this new relationship. On the surface, her ex-husband hadn't said anything since he had a new partner himself, but Melissa sensed he was watching for an opportunity to contest custody again. Especially now that Melissa had a new boyfriend, she couldn't predict what actions Brad might take. Meanwhile, the relationship between Linda and Emma was delicate. Linda outwardly treated Emma nicely, but Melissa's woman's intuition told her that Linda was jealous of the deep affection Brad showed his daughter. While Linda wasn't the wicked stepmother from daytime dramas, she seemed to want to interfere with Brad and Emma's time together. "Come on, we'll be late. Emma, once you've brushed your teeth, change into your uniform." After finishing the hectic morning preparations, Melissa sent her daughter off to school before heading to the hospital herself. Another busy day was about to begin. Mom, is Michael coming over today too? At 7 in the evening on a weekday, Melissa smiled at Emma's question as she cleared the dinner dishes while her daughter worked on homework at the table. Her relationship with Michael had progressed gradually, and he now joined them for dinner about twice a week. Not today, sweetheart. He's on night duty. Noticing Emma's slight disappointment, Melissa couldn't help but peek at her homework. She felt relief and gratitude that her daughter had opened her heart to her new boyfriend. This problem is difficult, Emma said, pointing to her math workbook with her left hand. Suddenly, Emma's face twisted in discomfort. What's wrong? I feel something strange. Emma stared at the middle finger of her left hand, frowning curiously. Mom, I think there's something inside my finger. Melissa immediately switched into nurse mode. She carefully took Emma's finger and gently palpated it. There were no signs of trauma, swelling, or discoloration. However, when she touched the spot where Emma felt pain, she could definitely feel something hard inside the finger. How long has it been like this? Emma looked up at the ceiling, trying to remember. Maybe since after I came back from Dad's house. I felt something a little off on Sunday night, but I thought it would get better on its own. Melissa's intuition sent up a warning. Had something happened while Emma was at Brad's house over the weekend? How's the pain? Is it severe? It doesn't hurt. It just feels strange. When I bend my finger, it feels weird. Melissa examined her daughter's finger once more with care. From her nursing experience, she suspected a foreign object might have entered the finger. Splinters or small wood chips often burrow under the skin, but in Emma's case, she was concerned that there was no visible wound on the surface. I'll take you to the dermatologist after school tomorrow. Don't worry. Melissa tried to reassure her daughter, but anxiety was growing in her own heart. The next day, Melissa got permission to leave the hospital early and took Emma to a local dermatology clinic. Dr. Johnson was a well-respected dermatologist in the area, and Melissa had referred patients to him several times before, trusting his expertise. Hello, Mrs. Williams. What seems to be the problem? Greeted with a kind smile as they entered the examination room, Melissa explained Emma's symptoms. Dr. Johnson examined Emma's finger meticulously, illuminating it with a special light and applying pressure from various angles. There does seem to be something in the finger, the doctor frowned. It's puzzling that there's no sign of trauma. Emma, do you remember touching or holding anything sharp or hard? Emma shook her head. I don't really remember anything specific. I see. Let's take an X-ray to be safe. If there's a foreign object, we should be able to see it right away. Escorted to another room in the clinic, Emma underwent an X-ray of her left hand. Melissa tried to maintain a cheerful demeanor so her daughter wouldn't worry, but internally, she was considering various possibilities. Could Emma have had an accident she wasn't aware of? Or... Her thoughts were interrupted when Dr. Johnson returned. His expression seemed more tense than before. The X-ray is ready. Could you come take a look? Melissa and Emma followed the doctor back to the examination room. Dr. Johnson paused in front of a monitor and lowered his voice so only Melissa could hear. Emma, could you wait in the reception area for a moment? Nurse Jane will show you some interesting books. Emma looked puzzled but obediently left the room. After confirming the door was closed, Dr. Johnson pointed to the monitor. Look at this shadow. On the X-ray, Emma's finger bones were clearly visible in white. However, near the second joint of the middle finger, there was a small metallic object of uniform shape, clearly different from bone. Melissa felt her spine freeze. What is this? Her voice seemed to come from far away. In my experience, this doesn't appear to be something that entered accidentally, Dr. Johnson said, choosing his words carefully. It looks like a small device deliberately implanted. The air in the room suddenly grew heavy. Melissa was speechless. "I recommend reporting this to the police," the doctor's voice seemed distant. "This could be a serious issue concerning a child's safety." "But, how?" Melissa's thoughts were confused, and words failed her. Who would implant a device in Emma's finger? How? And most importantly, why? And suddenly, the weekend flashed in her mind. Emma had been staying at Brad and Linda's house. Had something happened there? Fear and anger rose simultaneously. Melissa took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. What should I tell Emma? It's probably best not to go into too much detail right now. I think you should explain it as a medical issue and tell her we need to investigate further at a specialized hospital. Melissa nodded. She couldn't unnecessarily frighten her daughter. But her mind was already beginning to suspect who might be behind this abnormal situation. What should I do next? First, I'll refer you to a general hospital for more detailed examination. And Dr. Johnson continued hesitantly. I strongly recommend contacting the police. This is potentially a criminal matter rather than a medical one. Melissa nodded silently. In her mind, a plan of action was already taking shape. She had to solve this mystery to protect Emma. And if her ex-husband was involved, please call Emma in. I'll write a referral to the hospital. At the doctor's words, Melissa exhaled deeply. Melissa sat in the clinic's waiting room holding Emma's hand while calling the police. Trying to maintain a smile to not worry her child, she concisely explained the unusual situation. The police station receiving the report promised to send a detective immediately. Mom, are the police coming? Did I do something wrong? Hearing Emma's anxious voice, Melissa gently stroked her daughter's hair as she answered. Of course not. You haven't done anything wrong. But we need experts to examine what was found in your finger. 15 minutes later, a middle-aged female detective, Angela Thompson, arrived at the clinic. After greeting Emma with a warm smile, she spoke with Melissa and Dr. Johnson in a separate room. This is quite an unusual case, Detective Thompson said while examining the X-ray. We need more detailed tests to determine what this small object is. I'll contact the radiology department at the General Hospital and specialists. With Detective Thompson's arrangements, Melissa and Emma were scheduled for additional tests at San Diego General Hospital that afternoon. For Emma's sake, it was explained as a medically interesting case to prevent her from worrying excessively. At the hospital, more precise CT scans and special MRI tests were conducted. Melissa spent anxious time in the waiting room. There, Dr. Jim Harrison, a forensic electronics specialist, appeared. I've confirmed the scan results, Dr. Harrison began with a grave expression. What's been implanted in your daughter's finger is an ultra-small GPS tracking device. With recent technology, even devices the size of a grain of rice can track locations for several days. This is sophisticated equipment difficult to obtain at the civilian level. The blood drained from Melissa's face. This means that someone was trying to track your daughter's location. The air in the room froze. How could anyone put such a thing in Emma's body? They likely made a small incision in the skin and suppressed the pain with local anesthesia or something similar. It might have been done while your daughter was sleeping. Detective Thompson took notes while asking, where can one obtain such a device? They're not sold on the general market. They're used by private investigators or surveillance specialists. Or perhaps someone with connections to military or law enforcement agencies might be able to obtain them. Possibilities that Melissa didn't want to consider came to mind. Brad. He could probably get such a device through his legal connections. And considering that Emma had been at his house over the weekend. Do you have any suspects? Detective Thompson asked quietly. Melissa hesitantly spoke about her ex-husband and his fiancée. Brad's law firm, his relationship with Linda, and the recent tensions over custody. We'll investigate Brad Williams and Linda Petrova. First, I'll request warrants to check their communication records and transaction history. After the examination, doctors debated whether to remove the device from Emma immediately. However, from an evidence preservation perspective, they concluded it was best to maintain the status quo until the police investigation progressed. The risk of infection was low, and it wouldn't be a major issue for a few days. What should I tell Emma? Melissa asked the doctors. It's best to explain it simply as a medical abnormality and not go into details until the test results come back, advised a child psychologist. It's important not to give the child unnecessary fear or distrust. That evening, after putting Emma to bed, Melissa sat alone in the living room trying to process everything. When Michael called, she briefly explained the situation. "I'm coming right over," Michael's voice was filled with concern. 30 minutes later, Michael arrived at Melissa's house. While providing a cool medical analysis, he didn't forget to offer emotional support to Melissa. If Brad really did this, it's a serious crime. It's not just about child custody, it's subject to criminal penalties. Melissa nodded, holding her coffee cup with trembling hands. But why? Brad should know where Emma is. He knows her school, my house, everything. It might not be just location tracking. Or perhaps. Michael continued, choosing his words carefully. He might have been trying to monitor your parenting environment to gather evidence. The next morning, Detective Thompson called. Warrants had been issued, and investigations into Brad and Linda's communication records and search histories had begun. Additionally, they were tracking the purchase records and communication logs of the GPS device. Have you found anything? Melissa asked on the phone. I can't share details yet, but we found records of online searches related to tracking devices on Linda Petrova's computer. Melissa's heart raced. And we've confirmed multiple transfers from Brad Williams to a private investigator friend, Jason Connor. This Jason was previously investigated for illegal trade in surveillance equipment. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit together. What happens next? We've gathered sufficient evidence. This afternoon, we plan to visit Brad Williams' office. If you're willing, would you accompany us, Mrs. Williams? Melissa hesitated for a moment but quickly made up her mind. Of course. I'll leave Emma with Michael, my friend. At 2 in the afternoon, Melissa and Detective Thompson visited Brad's law firm in a downtown high-rise. After passing through reception, they were guided to a luxurious office on the top floor. The secretary announced their arrival, and soon Brad appeared. Melissa. What's going on? And, the police. A momentary disturbance flashed across his face. Mr. Brad Williams, we need to talk with you, Detective Thompson said calmly. We'd like you to explain about Emma. The three entered a conference room, and the door was closed. What's this about? Has something happened to Emma? Brad put on a worried expression, but Melissa could see the anxiety in his eyes. It wasn't the anxiety of a father concerned for his daughter, but the fear of someone whose secrets were about to be exposed. Could you explain this, which was found embedded in Emma's finger? Detective Thompson took out a tablet and showed the scan image of the GPS device. The blood drained from Brad's face. He sank deep into his chair, seemingly at a loss for words. I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Brad Williams, we've investigated the communications between you, Linda Petrova, and Jason Connor. We've also found records on Ms. Petrova's device showing continuous monitoring of Emma's location. Brad tried to respond, but Detective Thompson raised her hand to stop him. This investigation is based on warrants. All evidence has been collected according to legal procedures. I was just trying to ensure my daughter's safety. His voice was hoarse. Safety. Melissa couldn't contain her anger. How does performing surgery on Emma's finger to implant a tracking device ensure her safety? Melissa, listen, this is enough, Brad. You hurt Emma. You and that woman. Detective Thompson confiscated Brad's smartphone, showing him the warrant. I'm seizing this device as evidence as well. Mr. Williams, you are currently under investigation for child injury, illegal surveillance, and privacy violation. We'll conduct a formal interrogation at the station, so please come with us. Brad's shoulders slumped as if he had collapsed. Linda, she wanted to prove you were an unfit parent. She was trying to monitor and find evidence. But I... His words trailed off. Melissa understood everything. Brad was trying to deflect blame until the end, claiming he wasn't the main perpetrator. But the evidence was clear. As Detective Thompson led Brad away, Melissa stared out the window. Her heart was heavy, wondering how to explain this to Emma. In an interrogation room at the San Diego Police Department, Linda Petrova sat tapping the edge of the table nervously with her long fingers. Her perfect makeup was smeared with tears, and her usual confident attitude had disappeared. Please explain again from the beginning, Detective Thompson said calmly, sitting across from Linda. After 2 hours of interrogation, Linda's defensive walls were finally beginning to crumble. I hated Brad and Emma's relationship, Linda's voice trembled. He prioritized weekends with that child over our time together. No matter what we were doing, the topic was always about Emma. It was like having a third person constantly in our relationship. She exhaled deeply. I wanted to eliminate that child from our lives. But I knew that simply cutting off the relationship with Emma wouldn't be acceptable to Brad. So what did you do? I made Brad believe there were problems with Melissa's parenting environment. Taking advantage of her starting a relationship with a new boyfriend, I suggested Emma might be in danger. Linda continued, tracing the table with her finger. Brad became anxious immediately. As a lawyer, he knew he couldn't contest custody without evidence. So I suggested monitoring. Please explain about the GPS device. Jason. Brad's private investigator friend arranged it. He procured an ultra-small tracking device. We planned to plant it in Emma's belongings, her backpack or favorite stuffed animal. But Jason said such things would be discovered quickly or left behind. So, he proposed a more reliable method. The method of implanting it in Emma's finger. Jason is a professional. He said the device was very small and could be easily implanted while the child was sleeping, using local anesthesia so she wouldn't feel pain. And you carried this out. Emma always sleeps deeply on weekends. Linda looked up with tears in her eyes and continued. I was planning to give Brad sleeping pills and do it without his knowledge. But Brad knew about the plan too. He initially objected, but finally agreed, saying it was to protect his daughter from Melissa. In another interrogation room, Brad Williams sat with his lawyer. My client did not directly perform the device implantation, the lawyer argued. He merely consented to monitoring to ensure his daughter's safety. However, according to Linda Petrova's testimony, Mr. Williams knew about the plan and didn't stop it, the detective replied calmly. And he approved illegal surveillance to find something suspicious at his ex-wife's house, correct? Brad remained silent, hanging his head. The man once known for his sharp logic and eloquence in court now seemed crushed by the weight of his crimes. At San Diego General Hospital, Melissa watched over Emma's surgery. As an experienced surgeon carefully removed the GPS device from Emma's finger, she gazed at her daughter's face with a prayerful feeling. It's out, the surgeon showed a small metal piece about the size of a grain of rice. It would be submitted to the police as evidence, but Melissa felt profound relief that it had been removed from Emma's body. The surgery went well. The wound will heal quickly. Emma, waking from anesthesia, looked up at her mother in confusion. "Mom, is it gone now?" "Yes, it's all over." Melissa gently kissed her daughter's cheek. She still hadn't told Emma the truth. After consulting with a child psychologist, she had decided it was best to share age-appropriate information gradually. "What happened to Dad and Linda?" Melissa's heart ached at Emma's innocent question. "Dad is facing some problems. You might not be able to see him for a while." The following week, Melissa visited the office of attorney Rachel Cohen. Rachel was a competent female lawyer specializing in family law who had responded quickly to this unusual situation. "We have sufficient evidence," Rachel told Melissa. "This is clearly child abuse and custody violation. The court has already issued an emergency protection order temporarily suspending Brad Williams' visitation rights." What happens next? As a criminal case, both Brad Williams and Linda Petrova will be charged with child injury, illegal surveillance, and privacy violations. In civil court, we're proceeding with a lawsuit seeking complete revocation of custody rights and damages. Melissa exhaled deeply. "Can we also claim counseling costs for Emma?" "Of course. We'll include treatment costs for psychological trauma." A month later, Brad and Linda were convicted in court. The judge pronounced the sentence with a stern expression. "Defendants Brad Williams and Linda Petrova, your actions have severely violated the physical safety and mental health of a defenseless child." The court issues the following judgment. The judge continued, looking through documents. Defendant Brad Williams loses all custody and visitation rights. A restraining order is issued regarding Emma Williams, prohibiting any contact with his daughter for the next 5 years. Defendant Linda Petrova is similarly subject to a restraining order regarding Emma Williams. Furthermore, both defendants shall bear the full cost of Emma Williams' psychological counseling and medical expenses. As they left the courthouse, Melissa expressed words of gratitude to her lawyer. "Is it over now?" "Legally, yes. But healing Emma's emotional wounds is just beginning," Rachel continued gently. "I'll recommend a good child psychologist. It will take time, but children have remarkable resilience." Melissa looked up at the sky. The long nightmare-like days were ending, and a new chapter was about to begin. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning, children's laughter echoed in the garden of the small house in suburban San Diego. Emma was practicing with her new bicycle alongside Michael. The 10-year-old girl's golden hair fluttered in the wind, and her smile seemed brighter than before. "Watch, Mom. I can ride without training wheels now." Melissa, sitting on the porch drinking coffee, smiled. Thinking about the changes over the past 6 months, her heart was filled with gratitude. Emma continued weekly sessions with Carol, the child psychologist. The first few months had been difficult. Emma would wake up from nightmares in the middle of the night, struggling with distrust of her own body and fear of invisible surveillance. However, with professional counseling and the unwavering support of Melissa and Michael, the girl gradually recovered from her fears. "Well done," Michael called out while supporting Emma's bicycle. After the incident, he had become even more involved in Melissa and Emma's lives. His natural kindness and patience played a significant role in healing the wounded mother and daughter. Melissa gazed at her left hand where a ring sparkled. 2 weeks ago, Michael had proposed to her, and she had accepted without hesitation. The wedding was planned for next spring. There was no need to rush. They had time, especially as they wanted to give Emma time to fully adapt to the new family structure. "Mom, I want a smoothie." Emma ran over after getting off her bicycle. A small scar remained on her hand, but the emotional wounds were much deeper than the visible ones. Still, Signs of daily healing were definitely noticeable. Sure. Let's make it in the kitchen with Michael. The three of them entered the house with a naturalness that made it seem as if they had been together for a long time. Meanwhile, in a corner of Chicago, far from California, Brad Williams was trying to start a new life. After his conviction, he had been fired from his San Diego law firm, and his reputation as a lawyer had plummeted. His relationship with Linda had ended, and he had moved to a new city alone. "Mr. Williams, have you finished organizing the documents?" Working as a clerk in a small law firm, Brad faced the reality of his fall from a brilliant career every day. He had lost his former ambition and arrogance, suffering from the fact that he would never see his daughter again. Linda Petrova's fate was even harsher. Having lost her modeling work, she faced intense backlash after the incident spread on social media. She eventually moved to a small town in her home state of Missouri, hiding her past and starting a modest life as a cosmetic saleswoman. Her once glamorous lifestyle had become as distant as another life. Back in San Diego, Emma and Michael were helping Melissa prepare dinner in the kitchen. Emma was washing vegetables with her small hands, working with a serious expression. "Mom," Emma suddenly said in a quiet voice. "I finally feel like my finger belongs to me again." Melissa stopped at those words. Emma's statement meant more than just the recovery of a physical wound. It was a declaration that she had reclaimed ownership of her body and life. "You've always belonged to yourself, Emma." Melissa gently embraced her daughter. The sunset streaming through the window bathed the three of them in a warm orange glow. A future filled with new hope stretched out before them.